Okay, so there is construction going on next door, and hair touching my face is annoying me, but the static weather is coming. Hi Capricorn, this is your September 2024 reading, Virgo season reading. I know that you'll be able to hear this. If you have any issues, please let me know. But it kind of makes sense to an extent. The theme for you guys that came up is restriction. Wow, a lot of cards just fell out here. And it's restriction, yes, in the terms of discipline, but it's also just a restriction towards, as a response towards anything. This is bringing a deeper awareness in your life, and can really direct where this very specific energy can go, very mental energy as well. Funnily enough, he has a hammer there. There have been some things over, especially the retrograde, that came up. And for some of you, I do want you to reflect. I want you to reflect on what came up during the retrograde. So when was that? It was up until like 2 weeks ago. So last month, during August, through August, what kept drawing your attention? Also, what kept your attention from remaining focused? What were the themes? Because when those things come up now, as Mercury has gone direct from Leo into Virgo at this point, and very shortly, and that's like, yeah. Okay. So what it is that you're working on is noticing. It's not what it is that's coming up. That's not what you need to notice. That could be important for some of you, but the theme here is that in between. Because each card we have movement forward, then we have someone looking back, but they're both holding something. So there's a cup and a sword, and then we have this on the bottom of the deck. So there's something that you've been carrying, and it's in the form of your hands. What do I mean by that? It's how you decide to use your hands, what it is that you use them for. Meaning, what do you create? From the thoughts, from the ideas that you have, what it is that you're creating, because you'll notice that as you continue to literally take actionable steps in moving forward, whether it be laying out boundaries with yourself or with others, you'll notice that almost immediately, within 24 hours is what I mean. And for some of you, literally the immediate is the resistance that comes up externally. And it's just something that you fight through internally. And the quicker you can realize that the whole point is to become aware of what you're feeling. Restriction of what it is that your body or your brain, for a lot of you it's your brain at first, it's your mind, and then it comes into the form of emotions, is that you realize something keeps coming up within you that may feel like a drill, like a detox. Something that doesn't feel so good to get rid of, how it would be easier to keep, but it's only easier for that very short period of time that you're detoxing. Think of, for some of you, I know this might be a heavy subject, but if you think of addiction, or if you think of a cleanse, right? The first few days, the first few weeks are really the hardest if you're doing long-term or something that you're needing to do for your health or for yourself. That's just something that you do. You'll notice in the first few days the intensity of it. It's a temporary thing though. That restriction will eventually become a choice, right? Whether it takes you an hour, 24 hours, 2 days, a week, 3 months, 12 years, this restriction of giving into certain mentalities that have actually affected your way of life and that have come up during the Mercury retrograde. So this affects you in the way that you present yourself to the world for some of you. And then we'll look at these cards. What you offer. right? What it is about how you feel rushed to, or how you're seen, and how you can't truthfully control that, and how that, but that does sometimes give you permission to maybe control yourself a little bit more. Also, you may notice that there's this ongoing theme of people not believing what you say, people not believing what you're putting down. And I'm going to talk about Pluto in a second, because that's what came up, and it retrograded back into Capricorn. So naturally, for Capricorn's suns and rising, you're at like peak growth. This ongoing theme for the past 10 to 20 years for some of you is you're finally mastering it. So when you're mastering something, do easy tasks come up? No. And you're not up for a challenge, but you are just getting so used to things being pretty even, so used to being not so exposed, not so drastic, and yet now here we are. You're mastering something for some of you within the balance, within something that is not adding up with your heart and your mind. The ways in which maybe you see love, the way you see your own growth, the way that you see and feel, and your recognition of transformation within yourself. To know that transformation truly occurs when you are different, when the question is asked that you're used to having the same response to. It's a different answer. It's a different action. That when, for some of you, when life gets hard in relationship, you don't run away to something else, someone else that makes you feel better. You realize that that doesn't work long term, that is actually not the point. And for those of you Capricorn risings, this is about your identity. This is how you move forward. This is you in real time watching yourself leave behind patterns, and you carry them. Things that you've carried, things that, and this is coming up so much, is things that have been in your ancestry line, things that you didn't necessarily ask for coming in, but your soul may have been carrying. And for those of you who are like, not really with the woo-woo, not really like about that, let me tell you, if you are creating something or you're venturing off into the new, finding that woo-woo, or finding that space of faith, finding that crazy sureness, delusional, self-assured, through the transformation, through this understanding, anyone who comes back to first, also let me tell you, there's kind of stages, there's like a couple acts going on here. The first act, the Queen of Swords, Knight of Swords, and then right in the middle of the next one is the Eight of Wands, but then we also have the Eight of Pentacles, which is interesting as well. So 8, also this year is the year of the 8. 8 is infinity. This is this pattern that's just maybe a part of what you're here to balance for some of you too. And so first it's a boundary, and like learning how quickly things come back in your face and you have to quickly give it an answer. It's almost like, are you sure you don't want to do that thing? And then you get invited by someone that you're not used to turning down, but you know, you realize like that's not for you right now. You turn it down anyway. Then you internally start working on what is important to you. That is adjusting your values. You're starting to, because we're like doing this timeline thing here right now, and I've only talked about it a little bit, but it's spoken about, and it's a part of the eclipses too, because the North Node is moving from the first sign to the last sign, and something is starting before something else finishes, and that's normal for eclipse seasons, but this one feels a lot more, there's a heaviness, of course, to it because of all the other aspects involved. So then things move quickly. All of a sudden, your intermission, this time of things change, things adjusting, this transition, all of a sudden, Act 2, you're now working on yourself. You don't really notice as much the people that are coming, but they're getting their offerings, their opportunities, these illusions, these tests, these gestures are getting more creative. But the more creative they become, the more creative you get, is what you notice. And that part of you that keeps your head on straight, it's not about keeping it down, but keeping your head on straight and focus and not being distracted. You're restricting, and therefore now your heart and your mind are in this trance, which doesn't feel like a dance. It may feel worse than a dance, but it really is a dance, and you're learning to allow yourself to move through this. And again, the vices conversation comes up, and you know, coping is really important. If you are moving through a death, if you are moving through something really heavy, learning to adjust is of course important. It's a part of the process, but it's also learning to realize what, like how you cope, what's important for your process, through nurturance, through caring. And for some of you, let me pull the cards down. This is about letting yourself go back into those dreams, because we also have Neptune in retrograde as well. And if you're a Capricorn rising, it's in your 11th house. No, I'm sorry. It's in your 3rd house. It's forward. I'm silly. Okay. So it's in your 3rd house of communication. So the reason why this feels a lot heavier is because things can feel really confusing right now too. I mean, this is a huge shift in your body, in your mind, and how you think about where you're going next. How you think about and how clear it is that whatever it is that you have been doubting yourself about, because you can have a few great ideas, you can have things that come to your mind, but it's where you put your energy. And if your energy is going into something that is very clear to you that it's confusing, that doesn't make sense, and you find yourself sitting there wondering, where is this coming from? But that's what this is transforming, is like, there's no logic to this. Like the heart and the mind, yes, the mind loves logic, and we have defined that as whatever we've defined that as, and the heart is love, and there's no real like rules, and there's no true definitions. But here you are doing this dance and transforming and looking for maybe one or the other, or something to attach to. Maybe you fear that these things won't come true, that you fear you can't do what you set out to do. And I think through that, an allowance of that ego to die and realize that that might not be a possibility, or something may no longer be a possibility that you thought was going to be, you allow doubt to creep in to a point where it feels real, feels true. At points you can feel like you maybe even let yourself down, but it's really important that you're transforming through something. That these doubts are bringing you closer to what is real, what is true for you, what does make sense for you. And if you are Capricorn rising, you have Scorpio. That's where you have in the 11th house, which is interesting. And that could also be a part of like what your community, the people that you surround yourself with, friends, good fortune. It could feel like things are being taken away from you almost, or that could be changing too. You could be going through a transition in that way, and it doesn't feel necessarily good, because for a lot of you, you may have had it good. Things were going well, and then all of a sudden this change, it felt like all of a sudden, but really there's been a buildup. And I want for some of you to see this, that if that is the case, then that's a part of how your luck is changing. That's a part of how your doubt is changing. It's part of making you realize that some odd years ago, you made the change to move into that direction. And now that you're needing to move into a different direction, what you need to remember is that you are learning. You're learning to think differently through this process. Because what that will help you do is digest easier. What do I mean by that? Whatever you're processing that's transforming your life, and it's deeply connected to how you think, how you digest, how you take in and process information. Now, this is a lot of emotional information. You're noticing too, for some of you, that the more you put this up, the more you realize what your sensitivities are, where your insecurities lie within this, that there might be just a few very specific reasons why transforming through a relationship has been, for some of you, difficult, because it can be easier just to start new, or it can be easier to not do that, right? Or to say it, or to talk about it, or to try to control its process, but at some point you can't do that anymore. At some point, letting your mind wander, giving yourself rest in the mind, is also giving your body somehow some space from what it is that you've been so focused on. Because whatever you're focused on is really important. But what's transforming has been so subtle and so specific for so long. That was flipped over. There's a lot of blue cards. I've been attracted to blue a lot. I wanted to wear blue specifically too. That's interesting. Because this is about moving into yourself too. Because you can control where you're going, Capricorn. You can, to an extent. You can see the way forward. But what is really necessary to also recognize as you're seeing yourself forward, as you are seeing the connections being made to what has been once was a value, but that just became this, if I accumulate more of, I feel more safely attached to myself, to my security, and therefore that does work for some things, especially for, saving money or moving money or utilizing, anything physical, fundamental security, of course. But that's not all you are, even if to some people that's how they see you. And that's the interesting thing about the cardinal signs right now, is that there's something about your identity that's becoming apparent to you in ways in which maybe aggravate you, agitate you into the space of really honing in on how it's because this one thing at one point was so valuable to you in order for you to feel secure, for you to feel safe attachment, healthy attachment in this life. And now, like with everything and anyone, it has become almost a detriment to your ability or inability to process and move forward in the ways in which you need to now. So you're being given an opportunity in this season to take that information, move forward unknowingly, and to let go of some of the control and realize that that is a part of a deeper sense of security. That is part of what you are maybe mastering in this lifetime, is to observe. For some of you specifically, it's to observe your values, your assets, your money, your ability to utilize it, accumulate it, and then how you see yourself to proceed next. For a lot of you, it filled this deep sense of maybe masculinity even. whether a father figure was around or not, there's this you, for those of you too who are moving into that role. Whatever you did or didn't have become so extremely obvious to you, which is how and why you can become so obvious to the attachments that you have about your identity, about what you've accumulated, about who you are and what you've found out. And what you're finding out now is how that relates to how you've thought about things, how you've made your strategy, how you've played the game up until this point. And now that you're realizing, let's circle it back to this restriction. The restriction is about knowing when to strike, meaning to save your money, knowing when to spend it. Because there are times where you can probably agree with me on this, where you have felt like, you felt that before intuitively, like you just need to save. But if there's an anxiousness attached to that, that's what will come up this month for you to understand. Like, is that coming from lack, or is that coming from a knowing that this is what you need to be doing? Because at this point you understand and you're coming to a mastery of yourself, which is how you grow and how you continue to learn and become more and become this and heighten and your ego. But it's also because you like a challenge. But there's so much more to you, and being revealed, the strength that you're gaining, the true deep security that you're having through being confident. Because there will be a certain point this month where the shift from, you'll become so overwhelmed almost by the doubt. It's like kind of being in a trip that is very therapeutic, or a meditation or something, or in a yin pose where you can't help but feel into the pain or the sensation that you are feeling. And finally you surrender into it. Finally your body gives out. Finally you give out. And it's not about, and it's funny because you give out, but it's just to give into your natural progression. Because what's funny about cardinal signs is that the rush of the control at first, and the direction and the guidance is so good and it's so clear, and we get so into it, and then we want to do that the whole time. But that's not how that happens. That's not how momentum keeps moving. Ask the fixed signs, they know. There is rest. There are periods of change. There are periods of transitions. That means that life will look different. But there is a knowing and a security and a comfortability that then you come to this, where you realize that it is up to you, Capricorn, that through this process from here until November, what life is reminding you, a part of what life is reminding you, is that it's a part of your choice. A part of your own ability to be seen for not only the things that you have deemed worthy, that you've decided. There's a new way of thought. There's a new energy that's happening, and it started to happen already, and I'm glad I waited till now to do that. And you start to see, I think for some of you, really starting to see the energy, spirituality connection with your physical means, and how that goes hand in hand, how that makes sense together, and what you can utilize at this time. Because Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn is really laying out for you, as you're reflecting, that these small moments and occurrences are really a part of the grander scheme of what's been playing out. That the tests that come up are what maybe you once had valued and need to overcome. And a part of that is your own insecurity. And what helps that? Learning to restrict yourself even from those insecurities of like, well, that could be true, but what if it isn't right now? What if I don't give in to that thought? What if that's not something that is productive today, right? What's actually productive? Is it always productive to be criticizing, critiquing, changing? Yeah, of course. But how do you relate to that along the way? What does that look like along the way? And in Virgo season, it wants to shine light on some of the doubts that have actually been keeping you from this place. And I'm excited to get into the next part, Capricorn. Very surprising reading to an extent, but I think you knew some really important realizations and moments are coming. I think you can feel it within how you're thinking and questioning things even right now. So Mercury is here to help you adjust and breathe and heal and relax, while at the same time so in your life and in your experience that brings you to the evolution through each step and each phase, and you don't have to try too hard right now. Okay? Alrighty. All information to work with me is below. The second part will be up when this is out. I've been liking doing that, so that's the easiest place. And again, if you do these help you, if you find that this can help someone else, please share, like, subscribe, work with me. They're great as gifts too. That's something you can also do for someone in your life. But we'll see you next month, Capricorn. Thanks for being here.